the new downtown.
There's now more office space in Weston than downtown.
Everybody in DC,
There might be as much office
found out
space
about
in
Reston.
Reston as places.
They thought it was a little country.
We'll go ahead and get started, although I doubt the meetings are on time tonight, but we'll start promptly, hopefully we can end a little bit early. I'm Jim Ford, the chair of the committee, and just want to go through the agenda quickly. Actually, I don't think we have meeting minutes to review. I don't know, did you send me? Or I didn't circulate it, that's my fault. That's not my fault for not circulating them. I'll circulate them for the next meeting and we can approve those next time. And then we'll go into community concerns. If there are things from the members of the public that aren't addressed here, we'll hear those. Matthew Slutz can help us out. Really cool, interesting project to talk about. We'll hear updates from our supervisor and county commission members. And then a couple of committee items. So when I created the agenda, I had intended to send a hyperlink to the development tracking project thanks to Michael. This is something that Michael had started and I work on. So Michael started this, put it together, and I kind of added to it. This is where we've been tracking all the development projects that have come before us for community meetings for the past few years. We'll just take a look at that. It's kind of just some interesting data to show where things are. Also, I do want to talk about the budget and the CIP development cycle. And every year, we talk about like how do we get infrastructure, all this thing. And one thing that we probably have not done as good a job on is being really proactive and getting ahead of the budget development cycle. Sometimes when we get involved even in community meetings, it's like, it seems like it's very late in the day. Right? We're sometimes talking about in February, March, April. That is, in my view, way too late. I think we need to get sort of the process started a little bit sooner so we can maybe try to get ahead of things. So we'll take a look, because I think, and I believe it was just last month, right? The board just adopted the budget calendar for the upcoming cycle.
For the dates of the meetings, that's right. But we'll talk, when you get to that point in the agenda.
Yeah, I know it seems wild to be talking about the budget, because we just passed the budget, but we got to start thinking about it. And then we'll just wrap up with some brainstorming. We'll go over, Allison can talk a little about it, I can talk about what's on deck and sort of where we are in the next cycle in terms of meeting topics, and see what else we might add to the agenda. All right, we'll start with, I guess now that I've done that, introduction for everybody. Joe Moore from the pilots.
I'm Alice Variable, the staff liaison. I live in the city.
I'm Valerie Long, and I live in Old Trail.
Costa works with around 250.
Michael Monaco, I live in Emerson County.
Jim Duncan, Parkside Village. Lenny Murray, I live in Whitehall, Sugar Hollow, and I'm your representative on the planning commission.
Bruce Butau, Old Trail.
Ann Malik, I represent you on the board of supervisors, live in the northern part of the district.
I'm Ken Thacker. I live on St. George Avenue.
Janie Holbrook, Westlake Hills.
Matthew Slats, I live on German's Gap.
Tim Tolson, Old Ridge.
I'm Terry Miyamoto. I'm here for the trail crew, Crozet Trails crew, and I live in the Islands.
Thank you all very much. Are there any, like I said, meeting minutes, I'll circulate this for next meeting. Are there any community concerns from the committee or anyone else in the minutes? Is there things that people have concerns about that may not appear on the agenda? All right, well, we'll come around to it. If anything comes up, we can talk about that too. Matthew, you want to talk to us about what you got going on?
Sure. Well, thank you everybody for having me. This is a little bit of a project that is kind of I've been thinking about for a while, and so I emailed Joe's like, would this be interesting to bring to the CCAC? And he was like, yeah, why not? I was great to talk about it. That's right. You start talking. I'll pull it up. So I know many of you. I used to be on the CCAC a while ago, but because of working in Richmond more and more, have not been able to be around. But that is kind of like balancing that out. Also finishing up a PhD at UVA in architecture and urban planning, where I'm kind of studying grassroots organizing, like in Charlottesville, around public housing. But have like a 20-year history of doing kind of community-based revitalization and community engagement, those sorts of things. So yeah, and the major thing, which is actually one of the big things that's been pulling me away from being in Crozet so much, is actually I'm consulting with the city of Richmond on participatory budgeting process. So that's actually where my heart is. So right now we're working with a group of residents like you to design a process that will allow residents of the city to allocate and spend $3 million of the city budget. So it's a process that's global and it's come to the United States, and I've been a big advocate for it and teaching about it and studying it. So, but the reason I'm here tonight is that I just have a little bit of a curiosity and a little bit of a dream about possibly building a community garden or a community orchard in Crozet. And why do I want to do this? Mainly because like Crozet has grown a lot, as we all know, in the last many years. There's a lot of new people in town. We're constantly contending with that growth, which you are doing basically every meeting. You're dealing with traffic and noise and planning processes and all those great things that are really important. But I kind of really believe that a lot of those processes are kind of designed to be contentious, and we need to put ways of like doing things that will actually bring some fun and some joy and some celebration to the community. Things like the 4th of July festival, which is like always a highlight of like the bringing people together. The farmers market always brings people together. Valerie and I, a group of us, used to play kickball all the time out in Old Trail during the pandemic, and that was just a really great way for a bunch of people to kind of come together in a pandemic and kind of be together and do something that's fun and joyful. And I also just really believe that there's like a need for things to do in Crozet that are inclusive as much as possible. Like, there's a tendency that we do things and there's always a fee involved in it in one way or another. We need to do things that are open to everybody, that bring people together. And so I've been thinking a lot about, well, listening to the work that you all have been doing around physical infrastructure, like I would argue that we also need to think about the social infrastructure of the community. So again, how do we support each other? Like we did during the pandemic, when we came together and supported each other when it caused a lot of the crisis. So, and I could throw a lot of data at you, but I'm not going to, about like how those things actually make communities more resilient, can make communities more healthy. Like one of the things, the Surgeon General just came out with a huge report talking about how loneliness is a pandemic. And so finding ways to overcome that loneliness and making those connections, it builds what academics call social capital and social cohesion, which it makes a healthier community. So thinking a lot about like how do we bring fun and joy whenever we can, but then when there are bad times, when we do have major, like flooding events or whatever, hopefully we won't, but then we have those connections to help support each other. So thinking about that in big and small ways, and I would also say there's a lot of this stuff already going on. All kinds of different events and projects and things that our community are doing. Some of them, and some of them have gone on for a long time. So I think that's really important to kind of recognize all of that. So an orchard. So the reason I kind of got interested in an orchard was there's a book called Inciting Joy by an author named Ross Gay. He was actually, his book, The Book of Delights, was the big read recently here at the library. And in that book, he talks about all the things that are bringing him joy in his life. In a time when things can be daunting and crazy, like finding that and doing that. And so in that book, one of the things that brought him joy was this community orchard that was built in Bloomington, Indiana, several years ago. And he just talked about as a plant nut, he thought it was an amazing opportunity not to just build an orchard, but for a bunch of people just to come together, create something together, something that would support the community. There were going to be problems, there were going to be big questions, but when they came together, they could actually figure them out and work towards something. And so thinking about that, thinking about opportunities to do that more in Crozet. And recognizing the history of the area, I don't think we can get away from that. We've long been a site of like peach and apple orchards. The buildings that we have in town they are a part of that history. They may not look like it anymore, but we can reflect back on that. Use the orchard as a time to kind of think about that, what that really means to us. We can also feed each other. I know some of the best times in community are when I get together for community meals. So, orchard we can grow fruit and we can make things out of the fruit. Do that together and share that. So one of the ideas that especially behind this orchard, is that it's totally free. Anybody can come in, pick what they want, take what they want. So that's a thing that needs to be thought about and discussed. And there's opportunities for planting and pruning and cleaning, but again, there's all opportunities for making recipes, or bringing out old recipe books and like looking at old recipes that might have been local and thinking about that. But also a mix of kind of thinking about what are the old indigenous and local fruit trees that have been here forever. Like where are those? What do those look like? How can we support pollinators? How can we support bees? Could this process be organic? And really think a lot about kind of creating an oasis of like environmental sustainability in this community, so that we sustain not only nature and the community, but the land, and we steward the land as we move into the future. So immediate kind of questions pop up is like, where would this happen? I don't know yet. I drive down Jarman's Gap and I see that plot of land where there used to be a house that Stanley Holmes owns, or Stanley Martin owns, and I'm like, that would be a great place for an orchard. I live across the street. I live on the corner of Rockwell and Jarman's Gap, and there's that big berm that's kind of a space between Old Trail and Jarman's Gap. That could be a space for an orchard. There's a lot of spaces that we could think about, a space maybe over at the old Crozet Elementary School. There's a lot of green space there. It doesn't have to be one orchard, it could be multiple small orchards too. So much like the Trails crew, which I think is always an inspiration, like thinking about like, could someone walk through town and like pick an apple, eat it, keep walking, and then see peach, grab peach, eat peach. Or fig trees, like there's a lot of fig trees around town that I see everywhere, people's yards. So thinking a lot about that, I think there's big questions about permits and land rental, which have to be addressed. So Valerie might be giving you about that, because you're a pro in terms of that stuff. Planning that process together, I don't have an idea what this is even going to look like right now. So the idea is like, who could we bring together to help think about that? I've got connections to the landscape architecture program at UVA, but I know we've got Child's Orchard right down the road. I'm sure there's a lot of massive knowledge there that we tap into. There's edible landscapes and Little Blue Stem are landscaping and tree planting organizations just in Nelson County. They could probably provide those resources. We could map actually the fruit trees that are here already to know what's around. We could spend some time really thinking about, again, the history, like documenting it, using that as a process to kind of learn together and understand together. We could partner with schools. I'm sure kids would meet kids out doing planting trees and helping us clean out things and work on that. Eventually there'll have to be some fundraising to do this, and we want to keep the deer out because the deer are voracious. But I think that's not something I think we can overcome. We're a community of plenty, and we can easily come up with those funds, either through the county, the community foundation, or individual donors, which I think would be really important. And so what I'm planning to do kind of as a first initiative is just to see who wants to show up, get the word out and see who's interested. So we're going to do a meeting on September 30th at noon here at the libraries. It's a Saturday. And then we'll see who shows up and we'll go from there. So do you have any questions, thoughts, suggestions, people that we need to talk to? That's what I'd like to know.
I think the Old Trail, or the Western Park Master Plan has an orchard
maybe, is my memory correct, does anybody remember? I feel like maybe it does.
Yeah, some community garden space of some type, yeah. or-
Well, there's
or
not many
specific-
community gardens.
That's right, yeah.
yeah, But
Yeah.
I feel like I remember seeing a little area that was sort of shown as an orchard.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's helpful, but
And I think the plaza, I think was supposed to have some element of
Right.
that in it, right? Or is it not? I don't think it's as extensive as this, but some sort of, even just sort of symbolic nod to like some beech trees or apple trees or something.
Yeah.
I really like the idea of the open place, the Stanley Martin Parkish area on Jarman's. I don't know much about it, but I feel like it was supposed to be a park for the public to enjoy. I'm not certain, that's my recollection, but it's,
I was wondering
I don't know
too.
how much use it gets. I don't see people out there
This is at the corner of Orchard Road,
Yes.
that little park, okay.
Yeah.
with a fence around it and it,
There's a
Right.
fence? Oh,
And there's-
Yeah. Well, like yeah, a little small.
Oh, just the old fence.
Yeah.
No, it has a new, like a,
yeah.
New
a wooden,
Or
white,
fence.
white fence.
Okay.
But it's a large, relatively flat area.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like for me that was my initial inspiration was like it's right there. It's kind of at an intersection where kind of that the neighborhood I live in on Jarman's Gap, and then the neighborhood's back into Orchard, and there's a new road that's coming in. Like it could be a really interesting meeting point for a bunch of different
It's
neighborhoods.
a nice green space near a bunch of others where there isn't any right now.
Yeah.
I will say too, not to volunteer my neighbors for them, but at Emerson, we do have a neighborhood orchard, which is finally producing fruit, as of what this year, which is cool.
How many trees and what kind of trees?
It's a fantastic question.
Okay.
Nobody knows. Shoot me an email. I'm not the orchard guy.
Okay.
at Emerson.
But there is an orchard.
But there, yeah, there's some apples and we have like blackberry bushes and
Yeah.
so, and peaches.
I mean, my yard, we've got an old peach tree that doesn't, it's like peaches never, do anything anymore. There's an apple tree that is behind us. We planted a peach tree and a plum tree and an apple tree. So it's like, it's in my yard. So I'd happily share that for the others. And once it produces something. So
There's also a huge number of native fruit trees as well.
yeah.
This area was once known for the pawpaws.
Yeah.
They were eaten particularly along the Reno River, and they made it into a traditional custard pie. That is really quite good if you don't have it. But there's also multiple species of native plums that are also really good. We have 2 species of native apples. We have just a whole long list of indigenous trees that produce fruit that are now largely forgotten because they're not in grocery stores. In fact, in Old Trail, it just broke my kids' hearts when they cut down the Juneberry trees. There were 2 Juneberry trees, which were just delicious. And we would just like sit in front of the Mexican restaurant, like they'd like go in front of the Mexican restaurant where they'd just like be picking berries off the tree and like passing by like, what are you doing? Your kids are going to die. And eventually someone would ask like, what are those? And it's just kind of funny. And then in Charlottesville too, there's I think Dan Mahan might have had something to do with that, but there's a lot of fruit trees around in Charlottesville. There's Juneberry trees and mulberries. And I had several UVA employees that would colleagues that would just like wander around the city like picking fruit. So I think there's a lot of really great opportunities there.
Yeah, and just like not trying to overthink it either. Like I'm not trying to create the next big orchard in town. Like let's just do it pretty small.
Yeah.
Bring people together and see where things go.
I think this is great. I think like what you were talking about on top of the social capital. This is exactly an amazing thing. In terms of like locations and things, I agree with not overthinking it. One of my things is I drive down the street, I'm always looking for like underutilized spaces, right? It's just like, so, to me, like a big space that jumps out at me. So when I drive by that, right next to between the olive tree and the new car wash, right? There's like this parking lot at the car wash, which I assume maybe they had to put in for land use, like zoning reasons. But of course nobody uses it because it's a car wash, right? So who's parking there? But there's this big strip that's like the size of a baseball infield, right?
Yeah.
Between those two.
And, and then also, I mean, that same land wraps all the way around the back and all the way around the olive tree. And I actually poked on the GIS, I think the same person owns that whole lot. I think it's all owned by the same, which it comes back to a person who, not some giant company, it comes back to an address over in Greenwood. Some guy who lives in Greenwood, so.
Is that true?
I thought it was just Sprout.
It is just, it is Sprout, it is just Sprout.
So I mean, like, it's like, I mean, it's not some big giant company, it's like somebody who lives in town, so, like you're talking about people who might, might be able to go to and say, hey, if you're not using that space right there, that might be an opportunity.
Yeah.
Because it's also places like parking, you've got the olive tree, you've got the laundromat, you've got the car wash, you have Star Hill right there, people that are coming there.
It's probably designated in on the land use map though for something commercial or like industrial or something.
Yeah.
Well,
But it could
Would
be a
that-
temporary thing.
I was gonna say, would that preclude, landscape, modified landscape.
Orchards aren't usually that temporary, but.
Or, the other one that jumps out is just the strip right next to the fire station. Where those trees were that they cut down, right, where they had all those big trees they cut down? I don't know what the fire station does with that strip of grass, probably not much.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, we kind of like, we talked, there's some great suggestions. When Rep and I were talking about the streetscape selection down there, we talked about several great trees that bore fruit, but then we were told, like, they're not allowed to plant a tree that had any kind of fruit at all. And so I think, also looking at policies that we have in Crozet for when things do get planted, I mean, like, I think, one thought that I had too was like, we're thinking about like an orchard, physical space in one location, but you could also like with the mobile, create an orchard that's distributed across Crozet.
Yeah.
Where people have like,
I agree, yeah, I mean, it could be,
More of a network, like you said, with like the walking aspect, it's almost like a walking tour or something, like you can, hey,
yeah, I've seen like people have done those mapping projects where they've mapped a whole city out, like LA, like Los Angeles, they've done that, and it's been like, so you know where the lemon trees are, and you know where the lime trees are, and they're hanging into the public, so you can sit there and reach out and grab something instead of something in someone's right. I think also like I think negotiating the private public space is going to be a big issue, but I think it's like it's something that we talk to people and we can communicate about it. Like, let's think about it.
The county actually owns several acres of county land along Licking Hole Creek in various places. So there's not maybe a parking space next to it, but there's, I think, 7 acres right down off of Nicollet Court in West Hall. It's a short walk, it's just down the hill. It's got off a hill, but it's got to go down the hill, and there's 7 acres there that are being used for anything. Now, I don't know, I'm not a farmer, I don't know the fact that it's possibly on a floodplain, might make a difference or whatever, but there are, if you look at the map, the county does have pieces in various places.
okay, I would say at least, most of our native trees are like area trees anyway. So I mean, if we're going to do something in a floodplain, you could at least, it'd be a great place for like persimmon, pawpaw.
I keep thinking it would be a good place. I would like to extend the trail to make a loop around it and put a butterfly garden. If I could get a garden club and some bluebird houses in that area, I think that would be like really cool. So some trees would be nice.
And the foxes will love it.
Exactly.
Now, people aren't the only ones that eat orchids.
Because foxes show up and eat the persimmon the night
Yeah,
that they're
I mean-
ready. They're ready.
Years ago, we did apple butter in Crozet, we don't do
Absolutely.
it anymore. But we
We
used to
do
do
it
it over
now.
at Crozet Park on a weekend in October.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
They would make apple butter and it would be a good thing for like the kids to come
The
to.
rescue squad did it?
Fire department rescue squad did it together for a while. Yeah, so we used to do apple butter, which was a big, it's kind of a community
Totally.
event where people would just show up.
And they could help get,
They could help, because I mean, when you cook it out over a fire, you stir it all day long, so you have to have people take turns doing it. And, I mean, that would be, when you talk about community engagement, that would bring it sort of back. I mean, we haven't done it for, 20 years. I don't know if anybody's been around long enough to remember that.
The field school does it now.
Do they?
Do that, the boys.
And Batesville does their
And the Windmill Rurals are bringing theirs back this year.
Are they bringing back? Yeah, so things like that, where you could actually do something with the fruit potentially.
Yeah, I think that would be a great idea.
So I know that, you know, this is not always kind of the thing that we do, just talk about these kind of projects, but at the same time, I mean, the master plan does have a very specific implementation item for increasing the ability of the CCAC to do placemaking projects. That's like a thing. It's like increasing our capacity, we're talking about that. And so I think, you know, selfishly, Matthew, I want to be involved in this. I'll connect you online because I think that's great. I want to be involved. But I think that there is potentially a role for our committee, not in the sense of like, you know, like going to all these meetings and like hosting this as our meeting, but, you know, like Lonnie, you mentioned that like there's a policy change, or there are policy issues, if there are like systematic barriers to doing this kind of thing, right? If there are land use or policy things with the Parks Department or whatever that makes it more difficult to do this kind of stuff, right? Like I think about a few years ago, like Terry, when you guys were trying to do your fundraising, and the park's like, oh, we don't have a mechanism for accepting money.
They won't take my money, I know.
Like, you know, that's like a policy thing, right? That's like a, hey, we need to push on some levers. So I think, you know, obviously anybody who wants to be involved, we give people the committee, but I think this committee could serve a role as you guys go forward and think about this project. We may have a role in advocating for policies or issues that come up vis-a-vis the county or parks. It may be a good, and it may be a good, it's like a good like test project to think about all these different areas and where the like impediments are to doing this kind of thing. You know, in the same way that Terry, you come to us and we see those impediments that interfere with you all, your ability to do it, and we're able to kind of work through some of them, or at least advocate.
No, and I think placemaking is something that is important too, because, you know, when we think about just Crozet as a developed area, you know, density done right is not just a bunch of people collected in one spot, but, you know, I think people have communicated very clearly through the comprehensive plan process that they want more than they want green space. They want access to other things to do. I mean, you know, I love the whole model of, you know, creating participatory spaces and that sort of thing. I think it was like a year or two ago, my daughter had the idea of a participatory community aquarium. So I mean, I think that there's, you know, I think there's a lot of different interesting ideas that could make Crozet a much more vibrant place.
So with that in mind, I just wanted to share this. Like, there's two things that has spurred me like to do this. One actually was the county had that environmental sustainability grant that they just put out, and I was like, oh, Norwich could be something like that. But I just didn't have the capacity to actually apply or anything. So maybe in the future. But then there's a great, there's this organization called Civic Standard, which is up in Vermont, in Hardwick. And there's a really great podcast called Grumble Strip, like the things that you go on the road and they make the noise. And they did a little podcast about Civic Standard and what they're just organizing. It's called cultural organizing. And it's just like bringing people together. They host a monthly free dinner. Anybody who wants to show up, food is free. Like, they did a project where they created a community theater event. So it was like they had the local town like supervisor play this evil guy who was, people thought he could kill this developer. And it's a great little story, but it was all built like,
you must pay the rent.
yeah, like all built built by people in the community, and it was a huge success. And then they've been doing like clothing swaps and all kinds of different things. So I think like we can do small things. We don't have to think through. There's a lot of opportunity to try some things out and see what they might happen. So cool. That's great. That's great. Thank you for the support and thoughts. I appreciate it. And I do have some flyers for the meeting that's going to happen on the.
Oh yeah.
So we'll pass those around.
Sure. There is somebody who might.
Thanks for the time. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. All right. So. Okay.
Board of Supervisors and Planning Commission.
Oh, yeah.
update.
Okay, great. I guess Supervisor Malik, would you like to go first?
All right, well, I will briefly, last Wednesday at the board meeting was a very extensive update from the AC 44, the comp plan planning team, and we looked at 4 topics: activity centers, expansion of the growth area, rural communities, and, I gotta go to my notes and make sure. That's right, yes, how can I forget it? And rural interchanges. Several very scary topics from this community's perspective. And so if you have not already had a chance to go to the website and at least familiarize yourself with the proposals, and you can see the packet in the materials from last Wednesday. It may not be time to do some survey input, but there certainly is time for each of you to write to Planning Commission, write to the board, and share your concerns about those. So I can run through some of the topics for the activity centers. Fortunately for the Crozet master plan area, there are no dramatic changes because the Crozet area was the most recent to have its master plan, and the same destination areas which have long been part of it, Harris Teeter, here, Old Trail, are the same ones. Tori Kanalopoulos was speaking and she said there's a one-to-one relationship, and I asked her what that meant, and she said that it's all the same, basically. There may be some grammatical changes or something like that, so we do have to read very carefully to find out what changes are being proposed for this master plan area. But it's not as dramatic here compared to the Fifth and Avon, where they have made some very substantial proposals to change some of the activity centers there with many, many little round circles. It was reminiscent of the 2005 master plan here, which had many high-density cones strewn everywhere in the older neighborhoods, a whole bunch of them between 240 and 250, and this was how that population had come out at 25,000 people, which completely caused everybody here to flip out. And so in the 2010 master plan edition, lots of discussion over 2 years, and all but those 3 or 4 major activity centers were removed because people who lived on Brookwood didn't want one anyway. I mean, it would have completely demolished their quality of life in their older neighborhood, or St. George, either one. So that's one of the reasons why those high-density cones were removed, and that brought the population build-out potential down to about 16, which was a step in the right direction. So that's the short and dirty report on the activity centers. And there are options that will be shared, that have been already shared with the Planning Commission. This is the sort of pre-drafting feedback. I know the Planning Commission gave lots of input, and the board certainly went very thoroughly over all of these and had lots of things to say. So please listen in or look at them. Minutes won't be up for a while, but you can certainly listen into it if you want. Future factors for future development area expansion. This strikes a nerve raw for me, because anytime you think about this, and especially if you identify a place where it might go, then all of a sudden there will be this monstrous land grab, as happened out here when Ballard Farm and all the other farms were bought up when nobody was really looking in 80, 82. And so all of a sudden when things became forward, everybody said, well, wait a minute, you know, how did that happen? So I think planning ahead is, thinking about things is one thing, establishing factors, establishing metrics to show if you have really well used the growth area you have, and you've provided amenities for the growth area you have, before you start diluting areas where further investment is going to then reduce what's available to complete the job that we've already given ourselves. Then that's one of the things that was mentioned by quite a few board members as well, and was not wildly supported by any means. And not even the map. The map was not supported, I don't think, in my mind. Let me go to my notes and make sure. Then there was also a lot of pushback about bringing more commercial activities into the rural crossroads, such as Batesville, Whitehall, Free Union, where there may be existing, keeping everything that might be able to reuse, rehabilitate, restore historic buildings. That's always seen as a plus. Batesville store, Pages, that kind of thing is a plus. But there was little to no interest in new construction, franchises any kind of franchise gas, anything like that, just, everybody said that's why we have rules about no restaurants in the rural area, to keep all those franchises in the growth area where there are services for them. So that was reassuring. And then the last one was the interchanges. Reading the minutes and the public, what had been provided in the surveys about the interchanges was very much, put it over there. You know, don't put it in my place. You know, people were, it was so interesting to read about, we have watershed, and so put it over there at Boyd Tavern, or Boyd Tavern people saying, no, put it at Yancey. So I think this is still a musical chairs thing. There did seem to be some support to, if there were going to be any further investigation, that it should start at the northeast side of the Shadwell Corner, where there already is transportation improvements which have happened. I did point out that Stockton Creek, which goes straight to the Meachams, which goes straight to the South Fork, this whole area is a drinking water watershed out here, and so please consider that, and don't forget when you're thinking about anything south of 250 in this area. There were people who said, well, you have all those other commercial things right along the south side of 250, so more things should happen there. But that's, I think, a learning process that needs to be carried forward by the community to make sure that that information is well understood. So that was sort of the quick and dirty takeaway from that meeting. And Lonnie may have had something different that turned up at the Planning Commission, because there are often very different views of these topics in the two boards.
Well, I mean, I think the board supervisors did a remarkable job in that meeting, and I greatly enjoyed listening to the comments. I encourage everyone to go back and listen to them. There's, I think, one of the best comments was probably by Supervisor Andrews, who said that the comprehensive plan that we have now is ordered in sequence of the most important chapters, and the first chapters are natural resources and the rural areas, which suggests that actually those were the things that were most concerned for the people, that built the comprehensive plan, and yet these toolkits have really prioritized new uses, like expanding, and really relegated protection of natural resources and protection of the rural area as secondary considerations. There is no natural resources toolkit. There is no rural areas toolkit. That's interesting. It's an interesting choice. And that was brought up at the last Planning Commission by Karen Firehawk, and I agree. So, as I said, I think that, I caught a lot of flack because when this came to the Planning Commission, they gave us these three cars, red, yellow, and green, as to whether we agreed with this staff opinion or not. And I red carded every single one of those things. And I caught a little playful flack from some of my other, planning commissioners. But I felt justified after listening to the Board of Supervisors that all those red cards would probably seem to be in alignment with what you all had said.
Well, it's interesting that the board really focused before the process began on the fact that we had neglected consideration of climate change in the previous update, which was adopted in 2015. But if you're going to not pay attention to natural resources, then you can't have claim to climate change at all, because if we're going to go cutting down our forests and things like that, then we can't. We're not making any progress. So I look forward to more. I think there was great feedback, and hopefully the staff will respond with some other approaches that we'll learn more about. I'm counting on that. We're looking for that.
The one thing of the centers, the one thing I read clear about that was that there's no mention when they originally presented us of engagement of the CCACs. And so they added that back in there. And I think one of the nice things they did in that, in the report of the Board of Supervisors, is actually, we didn't take the staff recommendation on any of those items. We wrote our own. And so, the board of supervisors was presented with the same options that we were given, but then they were given the planning commission option. And so it was really nice to see that like written in there as an option for the board of supervisors to consider. So I think that helped. I mean,
And those were chosen. So that was a good thing, but that is what the whole series of discussions is supposed to do, is to help get more and more information together as it's passed along, so that whoever the final level is has the benefit of all those other efforts along the way. So this was, I think, a very successful, to this point. There's lots more to do and lots more questions to be answered and information to be added, but now we're sort of starting to get into the real meat of it. Now that there's something written on the page as opposed to the blank page. Blank page is very scary for the last year or so because you wonder what's going to show up. But now we have something to react to, and that's very helpful. Thank you.
So the one item I want to make people aware of, and maybe you're going to cover this later, is I want people to know that Montclair is scheduled for a planning commission public hearing on September 26th. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of community, I'm already getting some emails about that, about Montclair. I'm surprised there's not a bunch of people here maybe scared off by the rain already. I'm surprised there aren't people here already asking about Montclair and community concerns, but that will be coming September 26th. So.
Is all the documents already out somewhere? Because that's
No.
news to me.
No, nothing.
Okay.
So, I mean, well, if they are, I don't know where. I mean, I guess I can look. Maybe Carolyn has them in her folders.
Oh, I'm sure there's not, but I'm not the staff report fully. Because I think you usually just go until a week before. Did you just have like a bus schedule? Is that, like you haven't gotten the official like, staff report stuff yet, right?
No, I have not. And I only know this date because someone asked me, and then I asked Kevin, and Kevin said it was,
Okay.
that's when it was.
Okay. So that means there is no follow-up community meeting with a whole new plan.
I guess not. You and I have some other emails.
Okay. Huh.
I think we do. Yeah, that's, yeah.
And that's been consistent with what's happened in other applications. But when there's been a long delay between phases, it is disappointing that we're not getting another chance to see it before it goes to the PC.
I mean, and one of the concerns that was brought since it was brought up, and they're not here to represent this, one of the big things was that there have been some, there's the bridge that's not going to be built. And so, yeah, I mean, I think I think that there's some concern that a lot of the Crozet master plan is now maybe not as relevant as it was before because there's been a big change in our infrastructure. And so maybe there's the need for to do some adjustments to the Crozet master plan to accommodate the fact that this major arterial road is not going to be there.
And I guess, just so that everybody's on the same page, and do you have any update? Could you just tell us what's going on with that and where that stands? What line?
Well, the most recent horror from the summer is that the price, which we had set aside, half county funding and half state money of $22 million, the price has gone to $39.5.
For Eastern Ave, for the Eastern Ave.
For the bridge and the connection to 250. So, wanting to slit my wrist immediately when that came forward, it was just really, really unbelievable. There are projects all across the state. The VDOT has a statewide, newly adopted estimating plan, and it is being rigidly adhered to throughout the state to do away with the fact that there used to be a huge variety in the pricing of projects. To the example that the exit 118, 64, 29 south, the proposal to do it right and actually have the cloverleafs and things that should have been built in the 60s when it was in there to begin with was like $170 million was the price it was put on. $50 million less to do the project at 17 up in Prince William County, where the Secretary of Transportation lived. They got their money. They got their $120 million and they built that thing. So there was so much pushback after that kind of inequity started showing up that, to their credit, VDOT said, okay, we have to figure out something that's much more clinical and consistent so that we don't get taken to the cleaners about this over and over again, because that was a major theme of mine. So anyway, of course, everybody knows that butter has tripled and milk has doubled, and concrete and steel are certainly in that same category, which is horrifying to me because it can't be that much worse to be double. But anyway, when I heard about this on the 8th of June, I went straight to county staff and I said, okay, this has been on the list since 1992. What is going to happen here? Because we spent 15 years with other alternatives for this bridge. What can any of those be reinvigorated and perhaps get some private partnerships or something like that engaged? So I have been told that all that is what is underway. Thinking about all those possibilities is what is underway now. It has not been canceled, it just cannot go to bid right now because we don't have the money for it. And all of that gap of $20 million would have to come from the county. Because when I asked, the legislature and VDOT had set aside $200 million, I think, in a separate bucket of funding for this year called cost overruns. And I thought, aha, this is the prime place where that could go. Oh, no, no, no. If it's a revenue sharing project, as this one is, then the most the state is gonna provide is $10 million.
But it could be changed to a smart scale project.
It could be, and that's one of the things that staff is looking at right now, is are there other ways to fund this that would give us access to more dollars to bring this about. So believe me, there will be no rocks left unturned on this, but there's no timetable on how to get it over the next hurdle that I can provide today.
VDOT advised me that it was about a 6-year program once all of the funds were identified. So we're pretty far from identifying all of the funds, but it would be 6 years after that before, that's from Justin, before I forget Justin's last name, I apologize, but with VDOT.
It did take us about 25 years to get Jarman's Gap, right?
Well, that's true, it was on the list and not funded, or, well,
It was
actually,
on
it was
the
on the
10-year
list in
plan for at
88.
least 3 cycles.
Yeah.
On the list of 88, but that was when they had
Okay.
many buckets, and you put $1 million in each of 10 buckets. And then when one bucket got full, then you got to put it out there, but.
We talked about that in the 90s.
Oh, 88 was when it went on the list, absolutely.
Yeah.
Same year as the library, and they both got finished in 2010, 2012, so.
So, Ann, do you happen to know some of the alternatives that, when you mentioned other alternatives, aside from smart scale, so aside from actually just finding other buckets of money, are there other contingency plans or other plans, for example, extending Park Road on Dundee or whatever, that other ways of accommodating traffic and people out, is that what's being explored?
I think that what is being explored is slightly different locations for the bridge, which would shorten it,
Okay.
and reduce the number of piers from 6 to 3 or 6 to 4, I guess it would have to be even numbers. And also whether public partnerships would have the ability for a person in industry to construct it according to VDOT standards, which pretty much I think is accepted to be a lower cost option than have VDOT on the project.
Okay.
So as I said, there are as many unknowns as there are answers at this point, but all things are being investigated. But I think everybody's accurate to say this is changed all the assumptions about what can happen right now.
I guess from our perspective as a committee, I think Lonnie's point, kind of the broader point is, if this project were at a minimum delayed, possibly deferred, or even become actually unfeasible at some point, what does that mean for the master plan? And what does that mean for the way that we update, change, interpret, rewrite the master plan? Or whatever. I mean, it's the #1 project, right? It's the #1 catalyst project in there, period, and everything's predicated on that.
Yeah, it's the first thing that people say, for better or worse, when there's a, you know, people don't like a project that's going on next to them. It's here, it's dependent upon that project. They'll say, well, when is this going to be built? You know, like, you know, and I think, you know, if there's major infrastructure that looks like it may either take a really, really long time to build or may never be built, that may influence, you know, our decision at the planning commission about what we approve, because, you know, should we approve things that there's no place for people to go? You know, I mean, that's, so I think, you know, it's important that we adhere to the Crozet master plan. I believe in that plan, but if there's major infrastructure that's just not going to be there in the conceivable future, and there's, what does that do?
Well, the plan is, it's a holistic plan, right? The plan assumes the presence of all these things. It says, this works because this is gonna be there, this is gonna be there, this is gonna be there, this, and it's all gonna work. And of course, we recognize it may not all happen at the same time, right? But it's all predicated on the idea that this will all be there. The plan is holistic. You can't say, well, even if this part's not here, this part's not here. Well, this part's fine. And throw all those other, like, yeah, we'll do this, but we don't have to do that. So it all works together. Yeah, that's, so I guess that's my thing, is just from a committee's perspective, how do we discuss it or think about or evaluate these things when there are changes? I think that's a bigger picture for the county too. Obviously, we're on these cycles, right? We're on these 5-year county master plan cycles, which tend to be longer, right? But they're supposed to be 5 years. But what happens when you're in year 3 and there's a major disruption or a major whatever? Yeah, I think that's an interesting. I don't know. The mechanism to provide an updated master plan, right? I mean, I'm just for the sake of hypothetical, right? Let's say if the hypo came through and they came back and said, actually, you know what? There is no alternative mechanism for Eastern Ave, 39 million, and it's only going to go up. It's just never going to happen, right? I don't think we have a mechanism for striking that out of the master plan and saying, here's an updated revised master plan. Should we? I don't know. Should there be a process by which we could go and do that, say, quickly or whatever, or do an update? I don't know.
And how do other elements of
how
the
does
plan get put on hyperspeed with the remaining dollars that were there?
Yeah, because that's an
Get
example.
those done to take the place of if that decision ends up coming.
Right, because it's not as simple, right, as saying, all right, well, you know, Eastern Ave gets struck, so everything just bumps up one. You know, for example, right, so like the Dunvegan, right, well, somebody's got to get up to 240, 250, so maybe that Dunvegan connection becomes a really important thing to do or whatever. Or the sidewalks around Park, because, hey, everybody's going to be driving there or might be or whatever. So, yeah, some mechanism by which you could reallocate this, and I don't think we have that right now. I don't think that exists.
I think that's a good idea. You look at alternatives, take that money that we have available and try to do the best we can with it to make the rest of the infrastructure better.
And that's a good
Because that looks like it's never gonna happen, the bridge. I mean, we're short by how much?
20 plus.
$24 million? I mean,
What was the
Yeah.
jump that you mentioned? I thought you said like from 22 to 39?
Yeah, I mean, it's, by the time the next round of plans comes along, I mean, I'm guessing that it would be
Like
from
current
20 to 40 is the
yeah,
interval I
time we
have
come
in
up
my
with money,
mind.
we have another $5 million, so I think it's best just to take that money and say, hey, what can we do to improve the infrastructure problems that we have and make it things better around here.
Yeah, and that's a good, because I also don't think, I mean, I'm guessing that's probably not how it works, right? Because what staff would do, my guess is, most of the time, right? You say, okay, well, we're scrap that 20 that was allocated for Eastern Ave, and now that's gonna go to 3 other projects that were high priority. It's gonna go on somewhere around 29, and something else. Because it's like, whoa, you can build Dunvegan for 5, and we can build sidewalks for 3, and we can do all that, right? And like, that's gonna take the place of Eastern, or whatever, you know, it's gonna not solve
Or
all
there's 2
that.
more roundabouts on 250.
You can do the roundabout, you can go, I don't know, find some way to dig through and connect 240 to 3 Notch, right? So people don't take Park Ridge all the time, whatever, you know, through Acme or whatever.
Go
But
north instead.
my guess is that that's not how it would happen, but I think that's what would need to happen. I think that's what would need to happen, to say that money still needs to stay in Crozet and just provide alternatives for.
Well, the 10 million county money, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right there.
Yeah, yes. Any other updates, questions? full-time community business, right? We've got,
Yeah, development tracking.
oh yeah, well, that's perfect, actually, I mean, it's full-time, Lonnie, I think you kind of spoke to this, but this is exactly the need of this, development tracking thing. So I sent this link to everybody, oh, I'm sorry, did I not, I forgot to hit send. I'll hit send right now, I sent this to everybody just now, this is our development tracking website, so thank you to Michael again for helping to, oh, there we go. Okay, so Michael originally compiled this data. Thank you very much. It's got the, one thing that's nice is you got the names of these projects, kind of when they came before us, and then links, and thank you to Allison for remember showing us all the county view. We've got links here, so actually just click on Montclair and see what's going on there. Because yeah, the last update was just from a few weeks ago, and I didn't have Montclair's new planning commission. Sort by dates for Montclair.
There's nothing in their past.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's why even,
That's why I'm confused too. I don't know why. I don't know why there's nothing else if it's, unless there's nothing else, but it still says defer to county view too, so I don't know.
yeah. Okay.
But I haven't heard anything.
So this is just a tool, and originally when Michael did this, one of the things interesting is when we originally put this together, and Mike was going through it, I actually thought we had a lot more projects, you know what I mean? Like, but it turns out that actually most of them have been kind of approved or withdrawn, you can see. I mean, for as many as it seems like we've had in the past 5 years, it's not all that many community meetings we've had. Now, actually, to be fair, I did omit some of the community meetings because they weren't all developments, right? We had like the daycare and preschools or whatever. We didn't put those on there. These are just development projects. But you can see that we're tracking these just to kind of have all the information. I mean, most of these are either approved or they were deferred, like Crozet's Porch from a few years ago. The other thing that jumped out to me is kind of how long ago some of these were approved and still have yet to push through, right? I mean,
Now, one reason for that contributes not to all, but the legislature during COVID, and for many other excuses going back 15 years, has found many, many ways to say, while the permit might have expired 2 years after it was granted. In other words, if you get an approval, you need to start to be vested in it, otherwise you can't just sit on it. And the legislature has pushed all these things down, and they pushed another 3 years on during the last session. So now there is a greater chance for a very old project to sit around and then come forward at some later date.
yeah, I thought it was just kind of interesting. The Old Dominion Village, we saw that project over 3 years ago, and it was approved over a year ago still. So one of the reasons I thought it was interesting is because
That's the site plan process.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, interesting. I thought it was interesting just for us and also for people in the community over here, because I remember we've had some community meetings, and I think some people have the impression that if something is approved, it's going to happen like right away, right? It's like this is going to be built right now, and actually you see a lot of these things like
Site plan takes
2, 3, 4 years.
at least a year, if not two,
yeah. So
after zoning.
yeah. Crozet Park, those guys, they got approval almost 3 years ago, or 2 years ago. They were here 3 years ago. And, yeah, it looks the same. So, anyway, I just thought this was interesting. Originally, I think when Michael was putting this together, when I was thinking about it, it's something we would need to stay on top of and really monitor. But there's not that many projects. I was thinking everybody would pick one and keep an eye on it, but there's not honestly that many. Really, the only ones I think that we would want to sort of keep an eye on would be obviously whatever is going on with Montclair. Park Road, that's about to be, I assume that would be approved, probably the next BOS meeting. I know we've got the planning commission approved that. Sorry, if I need to expand that a little bit. That's easier to do. Yeah.
Which one were you just mentioning?
So number 4.
Park Road, the Mobile Park. Yeah, that got approved at the planning commission.
I think it
I
went to the
think it
board.
just.
Oh, did it go?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry,
I
okay.
remember people coming. and
Oh.
Yeah, it was, I
Very
remember
well
seeing it
done.
on the agenda.
Yeah.
Oh, did it go? Okay, then I need to adopt it. Then
Yeah, I need
get
to
that. I
come
got
back
it.
this way.
Yeah, must have just happened. Sorry, I haven't done this in a few weeks. So. Yeah, and then Oak Bluff, but that's been deferred too. So really, I think the only ones we're kind of keeping an eye on would be Oak Bluff and Montclair, just to see what's going on. Yes?
I was just wondering if you've given any thought to adding columns to sort of say, what does this mean for a Crozet in terms of the number of dwelling units? and the impact on the local schools from each of these as they're approved?
Oh, no, this really was honestly just to like provide the
Just
links to
kind of-
information. Yeah,
okay.
so like here, so what it is, the nice thing is you can just click, these have links here, and this
And
will
you can
take
go
you
to all of that.
to the
right.
information. Yeah, it's got the
Yeah.
staff report, any staff
Yeah.
reports, things
Yep,
like that,
yep.
analyses. Yeah. We're really just trying to keep it bare information. And really the most important thing was just to gather, honestly for us too, just to have these links and then to kind of have a status of where things are. I thought there would be more, and then there's actually more as many as I thought.
Sort of tangentially, Joe, besides Acme, where else in Crozet is there land to be developed?
I was just thinking about this the other day. I was thinking about community meetings. I was like, how many more can we have? There's not a lot more community meetings we can have, honestly.
Yeah.
There's really not.
I mean, it's not residential, but there's, the land is my backyard, which is like next to the green olive tree. behind
Yeah.
That lot that's for sale.
Beaver Creek.
Yeah, but that's, light industrial. So.
So I don't know.
Yeah,
That needs to be like by right, or so it may not even need it.
There's just not much land left.
Yeah, Tim?
Yeah, the CCA explored working with the architecture school on the Acme Visible property, and the Wilson group said they would not allow students, architecture students to come on the property. So the architecture school put the project on hold to have a semester-long project of developing possibilities for that space when it comes on the market. So we're still interested in that, but
When was that then?
the spring and the summer. We talked with an architecture school faculty member who put it forward to his dean to do a whole class on it, and then he wrote the Wilson group to ask them permissions, and they would not grant permission.
Are they going to develop it themselves, or are they going to sell it? Do you know, do you get a sense of what they?
They're not saying.
Yeah.
I think they're gonna sell it, but that's just my thoughts on what they're up to. Sarah Huddle has been in contact with them.
She's with the PR group.
She was the PR group in Richmond, yeah.
But they're a very diversified bean company. I mean, they make whiskey and a whole lot of other stuff, so that they have lots of different irons in the fire. And it's very hard to predict where this fits in their overall scheme of things either. While you're here, could you click on that number 11? Because I think that has a date when it has to be done.
Pleasant Green?
And the stream crossing, the
Oh, the
bridge,
stream crossing.
which was supposed to be built originally before any of the construction happened in there to keep the trucks off of Blue Ridge Avenue and Carter Street and Alley Street back there. His name escapes me at the moment. And,
Sorry, oh, the action.
Yeah, you probably have to scroll to find it.
Yeah, when you guys approved Bamboo Grove, did you point out that maybe they
Oh,
should
sorry.
name it after the
Yeah,
invasive species?
There's an approval, it's like three.
No, it's not Spencer
$3
Court.
Oh,
Yeah,
there.
that might be the action.
I think the bamboo is what's protecting the stream, so I'm.
It was two more down from
Through
there.
September.
Well, two down was
It was a little lower, go
Oh,
back.
sorry, was it back?
That's all right, but that at least tells you when it was approved.
Sorry,
2020.
did you have it?
Action letter right there.
The one that says.
English
action.
major.
Okay.
All right.
There's an expiration, what is number 6 say? It's not commenced by, insert 5 years after the date of approval, then it will be deemed abandoned. Okay, so
5 years from
we're still not there.
From July
Right.
of 20.
2025.
July.
Plus whatever the legislature did to it. Okay, so I was really hoping that they were gonna run up against their deadline and have to build a bridge, but
We've got a couple more
doesn't look
years.
like it. Okay.
We're
Well, thank-
blowing through that community so fast.
I'm sorry, Jimmy.
We're blowing through that community so fast, because the houses are coming up, just.
Yeah, popping up like mushrooms out of snowstorm.
Are they gonna fall down in a strong wind? I mean, are they really strong houses? Can you build good houses that fast? I mean, how does this happen? It took 2 years to build our house, one stick at a time.
All right, well, I don't think there's a whole lot, I just want to show you guys what we had. I'll continue to link those, we can revisit this periodically. I mean, just to have all on, so again, thanks to Michael for getting all this organized and assembling it. But it's a big help just to have it here. And I think just, you know, Tim, when you guys are posting this, just to have it available, it's like something we can have and then update periodically. I think
Well, to your point earlier, people can then follow the project and see that, okay, they haven't started on it, or they've started on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that accessible from your website? Or is
We
that just,
can-
it just looks like it's a Google, I mean, not everybody has access to every Google Drive.
Yeah, so I send it around as a link to the, and you know what I'll do, I'll send it again on the agenda, and I'll link it to this agenda, because it has been, right here, this was supposed to be a live link right here, and then I PDF it just went away, so I'll send Allison an update once on the agenda on our website will have it, and I'll see maybe we can add the website too.
And
like,
the
to that.
CrozetCommunity.org
The other
website
thing
will
we
add
might
it to that.
think about adding.
So we have all the
Yeah.
agendas.
But add a column for the site plan
CrozetCommunity.org.
application.
Right, but
Okay.
I'm
So then
interested
you
in the
can
agenda.
see
I'm
how they
interested in
submitted
the-
it.
We will have that
So
link
where, you know,
Oh,
to that
they have
project.
the first round of comments or the 17th round
We
of comments.
have the
you know,
website, we have
Is
the
it actually, you
website,
can figure out whether it's
CCAC,
actually
CCAC
moving
both.
forward or not.
And we will
Yeah.
add
As
that.
opposed to
Now
just
they see
nothing.
the
Yeah,
grant, we can
Google
do that.
Drive.
You can search by the, like, parcel and stuff.
Yeah, maybe
Well,
you
as
can
a
add
name
that.
sometimes,
Yeah,
like
add
that
like a
if
county
you
view page.
If you did Old
Literally
Dominion
just send
Village,
it.
if there is a site plan,
Oh, yeah.
it would show up in the list
Yeah.
when you search that way. So
Alright,
that might just help provide
Page
information.
one.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Alright,
Send the link
budget
to everybody.
cycle. So we're talking here about budgeting and money, and I think, you know, one thing that we haven't done a great job of is keeping track of this. I just want to make sure everybody was aware of this. So here's our budget cycle. This is the newly adopted budget calendar. Or sorry, this is the recommended one. Oh, is that not the final? Is that the same one that was adopted? Yeah, I guess it says recommended. I don't know if that was the.
That was because it was in the packet.
Oh, okay, so it's probably the same one that was adopted. So, but just looking here, right, I feel like sometimes when we end up talking about the budget, by the time we talk about budgets and approve, like we're down here in March and April, right? But look how much is going on up here, and starting earlier. Like, you know, all these long-range plannings, right? Like, transit work session that's going on in like a few weeks. So this is just to say, I didn't have any plans. I wanted to just raise it to people and see if there were ideas or thoughts about what role we wanted to play or what role we should be playing in terms of, you know, going to meetings. You know, should we be? I mean, like in my view, I think we ought to be at the BOS meeting this month. You know, somebody is talking about this and saying, "Hey, this is coming up." Mr. County Executive, or whoever, when you're doing this plan, like, you need to start getting some stuff in there. Like exactly what we're talking about. Hey, if these things, some things aren't going to happen that are fundamental, we need to find some other way to address them, or whatever, you know, whatever the priorities are. Because look, you know, recommended budget CIP, February 21st. County executive already has to have that recommended budget CIP in February. So in my mind, like, we've got some work to do, you know, individually as community members, but maybe as a committee too, in October and November and December, to start priming that pump. So I don't know what, in terms of how we do that, I'll leave that to folks, or what you think, what role we might play or how we might go about doing that. Anybody have any thoughts, and what you think might be most effective?
Well, right now, during the end of summer to September is when departments are scouring their budgets and trying to figure out what they will then present to the senior staff. So that's happening right now. Basically, budget season never ends. Once one is adopted, it immediately goes back into the next year. But there are several things that I'm still chasing, and as soon as I get answers, I will share with you, and you can share it out with everybody. One of which is that the sidewalk plan was, I thought, coming to the board in August for reprioritization or something. And I have been having a fit every year, ever since the money for Park and Table was moved to another project, when Tom Foley was still county executive. Was supposed to be a much more important economic development project. It still hasn't built, but this sidewalk has got to get back onto the priority list, and it's going to take people coming to the meeting and saying, we were number one on the sidewalk list, we need to be back on number one on the sidewalk list because of all the truck traffic and all the things that were addressed in the Adele Street most recent public hearing, and were already talked about for the Oak Bluff community meetings which were held. So those kinds of things need to be shared out with as soon as I can get them to you, then you can share them out to the members. Because hearing from people, different faces. I mean, this is how the library happened, was that different faces showed up month after month after month for a year with posters and stick figure people and all this kind of stuff, talking about the fact that the library had been on the list since 1988, and this was 2008 and 2009. But that is what finally wore down the majority who didn't want to do it, and they got it off the shelf and put it out for bid. So it's very powerful to have lots of voices that come and talk about things. And when, in recent couple of years, I think the bigger, very contentious decisions, public voices have been incredibly important in the outcome, for no matter what it is. So I will certainly share immediately when I get the information I've been seeking for weeks, and then we'll go from there. But they're keeping your eye out on the agendas. I hope everyone in here gets the mailings, because it's an easy way to have the agendas and things drop into your mailbox, and can quickly look it over and see if there's anything you want to deal with on that day. Thank you.
You know, I mean, I wonder, it would be neat to have, if you have this, your spreadsheet about, project tracking, and I'd love to see a spreadsheet of desired infrastructure improvements.
Yeah, like the catalyst projects.
It's in the master plan.
Yeah, it's in the master plan.
Oh.
Yeah. You mean like just doing that, like, yeah, I mean.
But the missing piece is when they will ever be funded. They're in the master plan, but they seem to be rather fictional from the perspective of one who,
Yeah.
and so when they get funded is pretty critical to the whole dream.
Well, we could, yeah, I mean, we could try to do a similar thing, because some of the things, look, some of them have been, right? I mean, like, so Western Park, right? Western Park's not built for this playground. There's a pavilion structure, right? Like, it's like you can, there's phase, what was it, 1 ASAP, I guess it's called, right? But like, you could update part of it. You can say, hey, there's, some of it is like progressing, right? It's not totally grass. There's the sidewalk project there by Harris Teeter that's put in. There are things that were in the plan that are slowly progressing. But it'd just be nice, to see what's progressing, what's not.
Yeah, that's a,
I will say, as a hobby, put the Catalyst project into a spreadsheet, so I'll just send it down. I haven't like updated it with like.
Yeah, no, we can do, we can go through and kind of do that and figure out where things stand. I think that would be a nice thing to do.
Speaking of, sorry, I'm gonna interrupt a little bit, but speaking of projects that are fully funded but not finished, apparently I just found this when I was just looking at the VDOT website for something else, and I will tell you all now, and I'm sure we'll send something out in the coming week, but I didn't know about this, so I'm assuming you all don't know either. But I had heard, and this is the case, that VDOT is doing a design build bundle with all the roundabouts that were approved. And there are 2 community meetings upcoming for those, including the 240, 250, 680 roundabout is in this package. There's a meeting Tuesday, September 19th from 5 to 7 p.m. At the National Guard Armory. And then there's a meeting on Thursday, September 21st from 5 to 7. And I'll send this to you all too tomorrow. And I'm sure the county will sit down more so too, but I'll just at the center on this 21st. And I think probably, I'm not exactly sure why there's not a third meeting, but it looks like there's one so the other roundabouts are the one at John Warner Parkway in Rio, and then the Green Tea at Belvedere, and then the roundabout on 20 and 53, and then the Old Lynchburg Road and 5th Street roundabouts. So it looks like there's like one meeting by 2 of the projects, one meeting by the other 2 of the projects. But the roundabout proposed for out here has been, I think, fully funded for a while now.
Well, it was funded with one set of buckets, and then when it was put in the trash, all that money was allocated to other things, and we were able to get it back out of the trash, and to save their bacon, they found a way, thank God, to put it into the fully funded smart scale, the projects that are all the others. So that is great. There's a box in the Gazette that has these dates as well, so if you didn't write them down, then look it up there, because I'm trying to get the word out to people as well.
So I think the bottom line is, to the extent people can and we can, if people are able to go to these BOS meetings. And I think it's one thing to like do, pass a resolution or whatever, but I think it's more impactful, frankly, if there are lots of people that just show up and say, right? I mean, like, we could do a resolution, whatever, but if there's a few of us, and I think if the sooner we start to meet, the better, because we also don't have competition. Nobody else is gonna be there, right? Everybody else is gonna be focused on other stuff. Like, yeah, you're gonna have people showing up to do the community meeting, to the public hearing in March, and then they're gonna be yelling about, why didn't my thing get funded? If we're there in October and November saying, hey, fund us now, we're gonna be the only people there, that's gonna be the voice they hear. I think that gives us a better chance of eventually ending up there in March, and then everybody else can yell about how Crozet got so much money, and then we can sit back and say, hey, just leave it alone. We're in the cat race. At least that's what I'm hoping for. Okay. All right, let's, future meetings. Okay, Allison, you want to give us a preview of some of the future topics?
So October 17th is a Tuesday. We're doing the all CAC meeting about transportation. So we're going to kind of talk about the planning and implementation process for transportation projects in the county. What the start time is going to be, hold on, I have it in my calendar, I don't want to say the wrong time. It will be 6 to 8:30 in person at Lane Auditorium. We are planning to record all of it and we'll post it online later, but we won't have like a virtual in the meeting option this time around. And more details on that will be coming soon. Then the next kind of big thing after that is in March. We're planning for an all CAC meeting that'll be virtual, like the AC 44 one was a couple months ago. That will be about the budget. So there'll be like a big kind of budget presentation and then breakout rooms where you can ask different staff members about different things. And then the other topic that we were asked to hold at CAC meetings in November or December is another round of AC 44 feedback, input sessions about activity centers and updated land use designations. Like Ann mentioned, I'm not sure how much change there will be in Crozet, but they do want to go to all the CACs. So that will be in November, December. I can't remember. Do you guys typically cancel one of those?
Typically don't do December. I mean, we often take December off, especially I think this year it's very late. I think our December meeting is like the 13th or 14th. So it's getting into kind of
It is the third, would be the 13th.
holiday season. I would anticipate we probably won't be meeting in December, but I would try to plan on November if we can.
Cool.
That'd be great.
So that would be in November. And then I think kind of broadly, at least what we were thinking about doing was kind of, what are the big ones every year that happen? So for you guys, you always have the Rivanna Water and Sewer Authority come typically. I think they like to come in the spring. I think it was May-ish this year. So we'll probably do that again. The transportation one is going to be the all CAC, but they've said they'll come annually, because obviously that's a big topic. And then, I think there was another thing. Oh, the big thing, yeah, we haven't done this year's parks. So we're still kind of working on that, and it'll probably be, I'm guessing at this point, early next year, that we'll have them kind of start going around to CACs again. But yeah, wanted to talk about other potential topics for the future and hear from you all. I don't know if there's stuff in the past that you've liked, stuff that you want.
Well, I would say, as of next month, we're 20% of the way through this master plan in terms of years. think it'd be nice to be able to, at least, I mean, a spreadsheet exists, but to revisit at the CCAC, go through the catalog projects and say, what's the status of this, what's the status of this? I think a lot of people would be interested in hearing that.
When does Rivera doing the day? I know it got pushed back, right?
I can't remember, it was in their presentation, they just gave us.
It was, but I get
Question, I mean, I can.
25, 26, something like that? Still 3 years off. Was it sooner, was it, maybe, it was
Yeah,
like,
it was
maybe it was
supposed
like
to be
24 to 26 or something, it was like a multi, because it's gonna take a couple of years, isn't it? It's a long
It's
time.
supposed to be soon.
I don't know, I have to go check the, it was in their slide.
Oh, you thought about that.
We'll find out.
So very large range of years. For all
We were all
of
right.
it, 24 to 28, so that's replacing the spillway to meet dam safety standards, replacing the raw water pump station intake and pipe to the Crozet water treatment plant, and adding an oxygenation system. For a lot.
Yeah.
I knew where the presentation was.
Any other topics we'd like to see? So revisiting, I think that could be, so just to recap, we've got October is booked up. November is going to be largely booked. We also are planning a presentation with the firefighters, the fire department in November. That leaves kind of January, February, and then March, we've got our LCC.
So what is in October next month?
That's
The
all
transportation.
CAC transportation meeting.
But that's the one that's on the 17th. So
Correct.
we don't have a regular meeting?
Yeah, that's taking place right now.
Thank
That's taking place on the I think it's the day the wedding's on Tuesday. It's Wednesday. So then we've got, and the parks may or may not be here like January, February, hopefully. So that would leave like January, February. And then April, I'm off the face, I don't care.
I was going to suggest transportation, but I think that'll probably sort of, by definition, be part of what Michael suggested in terms of a master plan update.
Yeah, maybe January, February, that'd be a good, maybe January, come back, and that could be a kind of a good, depending on what we have, yeah, like a revisiting the implementation project.
Perhaps to add to the list, an update, if it's spring of '24, on where the raise grant is for the 3 Notch Trail. Because that is going, I mean, there's, I think, documents being signed like right now to get that work started, or at least to get the RFP out to it. So,
And that reminded me too, in the spring or late winter, so it's February, April, May timeframe, an update about, right over here, Crozet Square Barnes Lumber.
Yeah.
They want to come
that'd be great.
for, at some point in February, April, I think. I'll add that for myself too.
and I think the update on that is that they're about ready to go to right-of-way. I think that they were to go to the right-of-way phase. They've achieved whatever the 60% approval from VDOT or whatever, which has taken 3 years to get there, 2 years for that and a year for the utility thing. So that's what I heard from VDOT was that, yeah, I think they're almost ready to do that, which we're sort of waiting for that check the box to occur in order for right-of-way to be able to be nailed down. And then be ready to go. I understand there's a meeting coming up about the square.
Yeah, that should start, right? That's
Well,
gonna
it's
start.
is in with Oak Street, and so that's why the square has been delayed, because it's important to have the grades all the same, you know, if you're engineering something, rather than a big jump up or down, or whatever, but I mean,
I think there's a property owner
it's for
meeting.
property owners, it's
this
like
later
the
this
19th, I
month.
think.
For the square.
Yeah.
The 19th from 2 to 4. It's supposed, and I would assume that is county staff updating the owners there, I'm gonna go sit, but I would listen, right here, okay. And does DCI want to come and talk to us at some point?
We'll have some people there.
I mean,
Oh, you mean
on the
here?
agenda, should that be something to think about, or you can tell us?
Do you want to
during
come
the
at the
day?
same
No, I
time?
I think that's,
Oh, that's part of the JV Barnes.
winter probably makes more sense.
Yeah.
So maybe we get January, February, somewhere in there. They can make it. Yeah, so that's great. So that takes us through October, November, January, February-ish, March, we're built up. So we're into, between the parks and all that, we'll probably book up for just about until April. And maybe we have a community meeting between then, or we may, so.
Are you aware of any community meetings?
No,
Like Jim said, we're running out of language, so not a lot of community meetings left to have.
Well, I guess it's a chance to catch up on
Yeah.
the things that are needed for all the ones we already have. That's a very powerful argument. You know, we've got the people, that's what worked for the school bond, was the children already here. And that school bond was approved with a very high return rate, approval rate.
So one thought I had, maybe it's crazy, but this got me thinking, you know, in terms of, you know, maybe in combination when we talk to parks, about thinking about, you know, maybe there should be some discussion about livability in Crozet and what kinds of activities and what kind of amenities do people want, besides just things like sidewalks.
Yeah.
You know, what kind of things do we want to be able to take our kids to play at, or do we want to experience, and maybe it's in a park, maybe it's not. You know, just, I think that would be an interesting discussion to have, about, you know, what do we see in the future, you know, there's this comprehensive plan process going on, right? And what do we imagine the future of Crozet might be in terms of, not just the built stuff, but like in terms of things we want to enjoy and experience.
Yeah, I think there is an opportunity for us to do that more in general, the place management of the buildings to say. One thing we talked about, I think briefly in the past, or I've mentioned it to Tim at one point about CCA and, you know, arts, Crozet arts, and these murals that have all been painted over, but what's the role of arts and public art as we go through? What are the opportunities to increase that? And yeah, there's all kinds of things we can do there.
But you see, I did a survey a decade ago now on the square and what people wanted in the square and whether they wanted a park or a splash pad or whatever. I don't remember.
The plaza, yeah.
Yeah, on the Crozet Square. So that could be something that needs to be done again.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see a new parks needs assessment countywide too, actually. You know, I think that'd be.
But the plaza design has been upgraded since
Yes.
that original run, so it has a pretty, you know, I think, fairly finalized.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, and the community, they got community input and they developed community one, so and fed it back to the community so everybody's aware of it. But they started with a survey, to Lonnie's point, about what do people want in this space? And of course, it was wide, what they wanted.
No, I would be thrilled about discussions about encouraging arts throughout the community, because communities who are brave enough and wise enough to do that really benefit from their own happiness as well as people come and see. And there are places, our friends in West Virginia, they're known for their murals. They've got like 30 in this little tiny town. And people come from miles around to see them. So eat ice cream and go home. Sort of fun.
Well, thank you all very much. I think that really brings us to a good run of topics. There's a lot to talk about. So thank you all very much, and we'll see you guys. Oh, yeah, Tim, you have any?
Just a reminder that the CCA meeting is tomorrow night at 7:30 at the Crozet Park Community Building. And one of the topics for discussion is a woman wants to present the possibility of hanging baskets on the light poles downtown Crozet. How would we accomplish that?
And the only announcement I have is that there is the library is having its 10th anniversary ceremony, party.
September 29th?
Yep.
3 to 5:30.
There you go. Thank you. Saturday.
All right, we'll see you all. Oh,
Joe,
sorry.
one other question. Where are we with new applicants to the CCAC? When we were here a couple of months ago, it sounded like there were some very eager applications.
We had one new member who hasn't been able to join us for the last couple meetings, right? We have a new member, I think.
Yeah.
But they have not been able to
And
be
then have
here.
some other spaces. And so if you know people, please ask them to apply. I've asked a couple of people to apply. We're just not gonna see.
And if you know residents in other county development areas, there's a lot of vacancies right now. So if you wanna, if your friends wanna be on other CACs in other places,
It'd be really
let
great
them
to
know.
All right, thanks everybody. We'll see you next month, but not here. At the
Okay.
County building.
Yes, yeah.